In the beginning, there was a hunch. If history's proto-marketers did or said a thing, the companies they worked for should have gone more business, more sales, or more exposure. Sometimes this worked, sometimes it didn't. These early proto-marketers concentrated on the things that did work, and through coercion and personality, they were able to get their next campaigns invested in by their employers. These halcyon days could not last forever. Fast forward to the Mad Men years, and the management had learned their lesson. While marketing campaigns based on gut feelings and good ideas sometimes bore fruit, at the same time, they showed they could also miss just as often, and this influenced a brand's reputation, for the good or the bad. Responsible to boards of directors and business owners, management could no longer rely on the hopes or hunches of talented creatives. They would instead rely on cold, hard research to decide whether to invest in new marketing initiatives. Enter the marketer, a creature that would have to be able to back up its creative decisions as business decisions, backed up in turn by supporting metric data and sound methodology. As marketers adapted to their new reality, new pain points joined existing ones. Then, they had to learn not just to create marketing initiatives that would succeed, but also identify data sources for successes and failures, and of course, try to make sense of it all. Today's marketer blends both strategy, research, and technology. Taking on market research methodologies, marketers deal with dense data every day, from social media engagement metrics to web traffic reports and site analytics, and incorporate them into their integrated skill sets to create initiatives that are no longer based on hunches, but instead based on statistically verifiable metrics. Hello, I'm Duncan McGregor, the Marketing and Communications Coordinator of Insightrix Research in Saskatoon, Canada, and your podcast host. Today I'll be joined by my co-host for the episode, Sharday Torgerson, the Creative and Digital Strategist here at Insightrix. As the head of the marketing department at Insightrix, a well-established market research company, Sharday has a unique insight into how and where the worlds of marketing and market research collide. Or more exactly, how marketing practices blend with market research methodologies. We'll also be joined by Paige Gignac, Manager of Marketing Communications for the United Way Saskatoon, and President of the Saskatchewan Professional Marketing Association, later in the podcast. She'll offer a perspective on the place of market research in marketing, as well as how marketers employ both the methodologies of market research and market research companies themselves, validating decisions, justifying budgets, making insight out of data, and living in the land of the unicorns. All that and more, coming up on the next Stories of Market Research, the Insightrix podcast. Welcome to our guest co-host for the episode, Sharday. How's it going today, Sharday?
It is going well, thanks.
Excellent. Well, since everybody listening probably doesn't know you as well as I do, maybe you could give everybody a little bit of background about your position here at Insightrix.
Yeah, for sure. I'm the creative and digital strategist here at Insightrix. I would say I have my hands in a bit of everything. I oversee the marketing and communications department here at Insightrix. I manage a suite of brands in-house. I develop data visualization for research. I also work in digital consultancy on research projects involving digital integration, social media sentiment, and user design.
Yeah, wear a lot of hats then.
I sure do, yeah. I would consider myself a little bit of an integrated worker, as well as what we call in the marketing industry a unicorn. So I take that on with pride as well. But definitely have a couple of hands in the cookie jar.
Yeah, and that's kind of common nowadays with marketing. It really is a position. Integration is a really big part of it, or the need to wear a lot of different hats or have a lot of things in your portfolio, right?
Yeah, it's definitely moving forward in that direction where marketers really do have to bring a large skill set to the table because of how things are changing. Sometimes I would even consider myself one day I would consider myself a market researcher in terms of what I'm doing for marketing, and then the next day I might consider myself a digital strategist. So there are lots of gears churning, lots of fast-paced environment, which I really enjoy. But yeah, marketers definitely have a seat at the business table.
Here's just something interesting.
Yeah.
As a marketer in a market research company, you've got a really good understanding of what market research is in general, probably more than, say, your average marketer might, just because
Sure.
you've been involved in this gig for so long.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bleed through, you think, between the position of marketing and market research, don't you think?
Oh, 100%. I think that's a really good point, Duncan, is that when you market for a market research firm, you have an extra competitive intelligence, I would argue, that a lot of other organizations might not be able to benefit from. So sometimes I feel like an extra special unicorn, if you will, because I have access to a lot of this great research and a lot of great toolkits that not only allow me to do my job well, but at the same time allow me to help even validate initiatives with executives, or be able to provide data sets to our sales team, or stuff like that, realizing that market research is a major resource to do that, but at the same time realizing that marketing for the market research firm, I have access to that. So it's quite awesome, actually.
Yeah, that sounds actually a bit of a dream. You to be able. Well, how do you use? Well, I know for a fact, but maybe you could tell folks how we use market research in our own marketing initiative.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting in that we literally could use research to market itself, right? So, a really good example of that would be developing market research or research around an in-demand topic that people are really wanting to know more information about. Say, like social media habits is a really good example. So recently we had developed a syndicated report around social media habits pertaining to Saskatchewan residents in particular, because we seen that there was an actual need for demographic information or geographic specific information for Saskatchewan. And then we took that report, we developed it, and then we also took information out of the report to market it. So not only are we benefiting from a research report that we can now share with other organizations that are interested, but at the same time, we can take information from that report and also market it to a general audience as well.
I imagine doing digital strategy. You're pretty much up to your elbows with data all day. Just kind of one of the hats of a modern marketer is the ability to not only do research, but use that research to validate your marketing initiatives, as well as to get buy-in from management, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and we actually touch on this with Paige, our guest, as well.
Yeah, a little later on, right?
Yeah, you betcha. The buy-in is a really big deal, and you can really get that buy-in by sharing a good data set. But by getting a good data set, you have to really understand a multitude of channels as well. So being a bit of a modern day marketer, you really have to kind of understand what that looks like. But I would also argue that market research really does help really alleviate that understanding as well. So, I think on both sides of the fence, I want marketers to know that they're not necessarily alone in that regard. I think all of us have struggled with the idea that data can be quite heavy, and that it's constantly changing, and that we have to adapt to that. But I would like to encourage other marketers to really consider using market research as well to try to alleviate that and dig into the insights as well.
Right on. So later on, we're going to be talking to Paige. She's a local and regional, actually, marketing guru here. We dug into a little bit of this stuff that we're talking about now with her, so I don't want to spoil that because it was really good.
Yeah.
So why don't we just jump into that, and we'll come back right after this.
Sounds good.
The 2018 Saskatchewan Social Media Report is now available. The 2018 report gives you access to both qualitative and quantitative regionally specific social media data trended from 2016 to give you an accurate and representative snapshot of social media usage over time, as well as the usage of social media by demographics. If you're attending the Fuse conference in Saskatoon in May, be sure to enter to win a copy for yourself. The 2018 Saskatchewan Social Media Report is an indispensable tool for targeted digital marketing intelligence in the Saskatchewan marketplace, and it's now available for purchase on the Insightrix website. To purchase the report or for more information, go to insightrix.com.
Paige. Thanks for being on our show. Welcome to the Insightrix podcast. Really glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. You know Sharday, I'm sure.
We're familiar.
Awesome. Could you tell us a little bit about your professional background, just to start off?
Yeah, so my professional background, actually, I got a marketing degree from the University of Saskatchewan. And then right out of university, I actually started a job in radio sales. I did that for about 6 months until basically my boss told me that I was working too hard to solve people's marketing problems and not selling enough radio. So I decided that wasn't for me. And then I started doing marketing and business development for engineering consulting company.
Right on.
And then I moved over to becoming the manager of marketing communications at United Way of Saskatoon and area. So from industry to not-for-profit. So kind of a mixed bag, but...
That's awesome. So can you tell me about any of the pain points that the marketers encountered? As the SPMA president, you're probably pretty privy to a lot of those, and you're in contact with a lot of marketers. What are some of the pain points that marketers actually encounter in doing social media marketing or advertising?
Yeah, I think we, around the SPMA table, we're always having conversations about pain points and what's working and what's not. I think that one of the biggest challenges that all marketers face, especially in social media, is just the clutter of advertising, how to stand out, what's working, is it videos, are they hot, or are people sick of seeing them, are we going back to still images, color usage, copy, what is standing out? We hear that constantly. How do we get ourselves heard? I think that's like the number one problem marketers are facing right now.
So when that comes to market research, do you ever find any of the marketers that you're in contact with using market research very often?
Yeah, for sure. We definitely encounter that. And I know in my job, we often will do A/B testing, see what's working on social. We've ran a few campaigns where we do that through email, on social, and test everything, like test the color, test the photo, test the copy, test everything, and just kind of see what works. And then once we find out that A is better than B, we can go forward with that idea, and that works really well. So I think that that's something that marketers have to just add into their toolboxes. A/B testing is a necessity. Because there's no other way to know than to test it.
Well, and I think in terms of the social media landscape, there are so many channels that we're working in as well. So if you're talking about a social media channel like Twitter and the type of advertisement that goes on Twitter versus, say, the type of advertisement that gets fit between, your 9 to 5 news as a commercial, the messaging is obviously going to be quite different because the target audience is different, but also its delivery, which is a big part of it. So being able to test the messaging, being able to test the palette, being able to test the imagery, due to the fact that there are so many channels involved, I think is really important to keep in mind. And that's where a lot of this success in market research comes into play. It's being able to just idealize a robust marketing campaign with multiple channels of promotion, and then determine the success by pushing it through the research.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that we encounter as marketers is just the constant change of even what you're able to do, what the capabilities of, say, Facebook are for advertising and Twitter are for advertising. And I know, Facebook, I constantly run into this, is that I have too much copy, and I just have text on my logo that ends up being too much. And, you kind of play with those types of things too. You find out your ad is canceled, so you got to change it up. And so I think it's kind of that game of keeping up and then being able to perform.
Yeah, there's a bit of a balance, and this is something we, as marketers, I think experience all the time, is you'll go to develop a campaign, and then 8 months later, when you're going to refresh the campaign, perhaps Twitter changed all of its image sizes. Perhaps Facebook only allows 20% of text on top of their image, and then therefore you have to readapt a lot of how your messaging looks. So doing the ad testing up front does help deliver on that, but it's also playing a bit of a balance, a bit of a game in terms of keeping up with the marketing changes. But it's more or less the trends in the changes of these platforms.
Yeah.
We find that all the time with our CRM that we're running in. Constantly we're having to manage our, say, photo sizes, aspect ratios, copy length. When you're working with this stuff, being able to test it's very important.
Actually, you made a good point, because with CRMs as well, one that we utilize that we consider a bit of a standard in the marketing space, really allows you to look at the responsiveness of these ads as well. So we can actually take an ad campaign, look at the source information, and determine if it's responsive on all the current devices. So it's really important, especially in consideration to the fact if a lot of your marketing is digitally ready, that's something to keep in mind. So.
Do you think regionality matters a great deal when it comes to, say, even social media marketing, some of that global?
I think regionality does matter, but I think it's also about knowing your audience. So I think that it's less about regions and more about target audiences. So what might work for my audience at United Way might be completely different than even the audience that we're reaching through SPMA. So it's constantly just knowing what's working, and then I think that comes into the testing and research all over again, right? It does matter, but I think it matters less than just your target market.
I think that's interesting, Paige, because what that really does tell as well is you can find a lot of the specific information in these personas, in these target audiences. So while you may advertise to a specific region, it is also about understanding who that target persona is. We recently went to a digital summit here in the city,
Sure
and
did. Yeah.
a lot of the issues that came to the plate weren't necessarily digital issues. They weren't necessarily marketing issues. A lot of the issues that people had up front were wanting to know how they can target that persona, because they figured out all the data up front. They knew who these people were, where they were coming from, but what they couldn't determine is, if that person skateboarded on a Friday night or liked punk rock music, right?
Yeah.
So there were these aspects of the persona that they weren't quite picking up. But as a market research firm too, that's where we like to really push a lot of the qualitative aspect.
That's it.
And that really does come into play with social media research, because one thing to keep in mind is if we think about social media being a bit of a sample, it's literally the largest demographic market in existence, right? So, not only can we target to the right audience, but once we start building these campaigns, it's quite possible to develop an audience around, their lifestyle, their likes, what they're engaged with. But it's being able to really put the why into that, and I think that's where a lot of social media sentiment comes into play, a lot of qualitative research, but the upfront market research is really important, I think, sometimes to determine that persona. So
Yeah, I think that's what I've experienced as well, is just, or even you think your target market, so you create a campaign, and then once you do some testing, it kind of might turn into something different, where you made assumptions around the messaging. You assumed your target market liked softer messaging, and it turns out they liked it, straight to the point, a little bit harder. So we're constantly testing that as well. But that research and just even knowing usages and, who's on Facebook, what message should I be saying on Facebook versus what I should be saying on Twitter versus what, we're sending through email. That all changes as well.
Well, if you look even back at look at the show Mad Men, right? Look at how they tested the brand messaging on Mad Men. It literally stemmed down to picking out the single sentence and determining how the audience really were affected by that. Honestly, nothing has really changed, and I think even in the capacity of how market research is moving forward, we can still take that exact same scenario, put it online, and do the exact same testing. So if you have a campaign that you're putting budget behind it, you're putting money behind it, it's really important to probably test it up front for that exact reason.
Yeah, I think budget is another thing to consider then.
Totally.
That takes it into a whole new level. If you're going to put money behind it, let's make sure it's actually going to work.
Yeah, make sure that people are responsive to it, that they like it, and that it's speaking towards them as well. So again, these text analysis that we do through online community panels, it's a matter of taking your ad, putting it in, and then allowing the research to determine how these people feel about the messaging. And it can be done by them literally clicking a word and saying, I don't like that word's too soft, that word's too hard, that word's too straightforward, but really allowing the marketer or the client, if you will, to determine the right type of messaging. And again, this can be for every channel that you use. So you can actually feed that entire campaign through your online community, but every Twitter post, every Facebook message, and every TV commercial could be one package, and then you can determine how these respondents really do feel towards that. So you're right. A budget is a big part of really being able to determine if the ad works. Because if if you're putting money behind something, you want to make sure that it's going to perform the way that you need it to.
Yeah, especially I think then it's then taking your research and being able to communicate it with those who need to know, right? And often as marketers, we're not the final people in the room. It needs to go to maybe somebody who's higher up or your CEO, and they want to know. So to have these numbers concrete is super helpful.
Yeah, management buy-in's a big part of
Yeah,
this, right?
big.
Having not just having the data to back up your campaigns and your initiatives, but actually getting the insight behind that to rationalize why you need that buy-in.
Oh yeah,
right?
buy-in is huge.
Yeah.
We're actually having a SPMA event in June that's all about buy-in.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's a big word around here. It's a buzzword, but it's a big word, and
Totally.
I think it's important in terms of data, because I think we can all agree that data can be a little bit scary, right?
Can be daunting, yeah.
We were talking earlier. It's a matter of picture yourself as a bit of a new intern of an organization that was data savvy. So it's one of those. Imagine if that product manager came along and dumped like 8 years worth of historical data on your table, and then asked you to deliver that one-page report defining the most important insights from this data. So as a marketer's responsibility, we tend to take on a lot of that responsibility in terms of business strategy as well. That's why I think there's a large trended argument right now that marketers belong at the business table, and it's for that buy-in aspect, right? Because if people are looking through a lot of this information or this historical information, because that's how we're moving forward, we need to be able to deliver that information to our executives in a way that they best understand, but also in a manner that they can be able to make decisions.
Yeah, and I think as marketers, we bring a unique perspective to the table in the sense that we can take the data, read the data, and then know how to execute the data in regards to developing content and knowing that market, and then offering value to any other department that needs, whether it's the sales or it's accounting or whatever, we can offer that unique perspective. We kind of have that larger lens, and I think that's why it's important we are on those tables, and buy-in is important as well, so that we can have our message and our thoughts conveyed.
Yeah, I agree. And from a market research perspective, that's what also makes market research a powerful resource, because it's our business to deliver the insights and the answers. So, if people need the data wrapped up, but they need the insights, that's where market research is a really powerful tool to use as well. So.
Yeah. Do you notice, as somebody who works in advocacy marketing with the United Way, that market research is used slightly differently as compared to, say, B2C and B2B marketing?
Oh yeah, I would say that working for not-for-profit, just in my experience, and even how research is used in sales versus industry versus not-for-profit is completely different. Because especially for industry, I think they're looking for a faster return. Where in not-for-profit, it's okay if we build the friendship before we're best friends. It's kind of, I think, slows down the process a little bit in not-for-profit world. It doesn't matter necessarily that they see my ad on Facebook and they make a donation right away. It matters that they see my ad on Facebook, they connect with the work that we're doing, in hopes that when we reach them later on, they'll have those feelings again and want to make a donation. It's just different than if I put an ad out to sell something. I'm hoping for that click through right away so that I sell it within that time frame. And with not-for-profit, it's different. Yeah, it's building that relationship.
So you're still looking at similar like A/B testing frameworks, but you're not looking for the same results.
Exactly.
You're not looking for like a behavioral result. You're looking for more of just trying to get frankly, just brand recognition and sentiment.
Is a big part
right?
of it.
Sentiment's a huge part
I
of
think
it.
that for some of our A/B testing, we are looking for that direct response. Like if it's through email testing, we do want that. We want them to open the email, but we don't necessarily need them to click donate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But if we send you emails over a campaign period, and at the end of the campaign period, we're hoping that we've built that affinity with you. We hope that at the end of the campaign that you click donate, but it's not as urgent.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, it's we often see not-profits or not-for-profits use market research as a bit of an advocacy tool. So it's the idea of educating through marketing, and it sounds like United Way really does take that on as well. And I think we can agree that this goes past a press release, right? It really has more to do with validating the business as well, or informing folks that this is why they should donate to this type of organization. So really nailing down that advocacy and education, but by using, again, market research, you can actually develop all that information up front and use it as your own validation tool. Again, something we as a marketer for a market research firm do quite often is we'll create our own research just to then inform our audience that this research is available or accessible.
Yeah, I think validation is such a key word there, because the advertising that we're sending out for not-for-profit, like you said, we don't get instant gratification. It's not all of a sudden we sent it out and an email popped in and we have a donation. So those numbers really do help validate that people are looking, people are interacting, they're engaging with that post, they've shared it, they've made a comment, they're feeling it. That's really important.
I think it even goes further than that too, in terms of developing research for the business strategy itself. So again, if you're an advocacy group and you really need people to know or be educated in that space, you can take research and develop marketing around it. So you might end up doing a small research report so that you can then create marketing content or content strategy around that research itself. So both sides of it is using the data to really inform how the post should be mentioned, or how how the brand voice is being perceived. But at the same time, using market research for a content strategy is quite unique as well.
Yeah, that's actually something we do quite often here in house, like you said. So
I think it's easy to do as a market research firm, is actually develop market research to market the market research. It sounds like a bit meta,
but it's quite meta.
But it informs itself, I think, which is important. I think that's a big thing that not-for-profits like to do as well, is educate through marketing.
Yeah, that kind of hits the nail on the head. Is so much of what we do is educating. So it's not necessarily the sale, as you would call it, but that education is key. So educating ourselves on how to educate people, just like you said.
It's quite meta.
Really does come full circle.
Well, I want to thank you a lot for being here today, Paige. Really appreciate you having you in and getting your insight to this conversation. It was really awesome. Do you have anything coming up in the near future that you'd like everybody to know about? Yeah,
we have some great stuff coming up through the SPMA. We are hosting our 6th annual Fuse conference on May 17th. So that's a full day conference, and ticket information you can find at fuseconf.com, short for conference. And we actually 90% sold at this point. So hopefully we can have a sellout, and it's going to be a really awesome day.
Get your tickets quick.
There's going to be some great info. We're also recruiting for our SPMA board. So we have a few open positions. One of the most important positions that we're looking for is our vice president. So that's a 3-year term. So you sit as vice president, you become president, and then you become past president. So it's a really key member. So we're definitely looking for people to apply.
And Paige, where can you find that information if people need to access it?
Yeah, so all our information you can find through our social media channels. So SPMA is on Facebook and Twitter, and it's great to reach out to us through that.
Right on. I'll make sure that all of that information also goes up on the website, so everybody will have that information. Well, thanks again for being on our little podcast. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, that was fun, eh, Sharday?
You betcha, yeah, that was really good.
Yeah, it was really nice having Paige in here. Great just her taking the time out to come talk to us.
Yeah, shout outs to Paige for taking the time out. Thanks very much.
Yeah, and as Paige stated earlier, she and the SPMA will be hosting the Fuse Conference in Saskatoon on May 17th. Fuse 2018 is the 6th annual Marketing and Communications Conference in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. The 2018 conference will be held at the Sheraton Cavalier in downtown Saskatoon. Speakers this year include former CBC broadcaster and University of Regina spokesperson and community affairs advisor Costa Marigus, and Mona Eliseli, the Vice President of Online Marketing Strategy at Page Zero Media. There'll also be workshops hosted by Dustin Ratzlaff, the founder and CEO of Unink, an online and marketing and website design company in Saskatoon, and by Andrew Potter, the digital marketing manager with the Wyan Group. If you want more information about the Fuse Conference or to try and secure some of those last remaining tickets, go to fuseconf.com. That's FUZECONF.com. We'd also like to remind our listeners that the SPMA is currently recruiting board members. If you're interested in building community, networks, or professional development, you should look into it. The SPMA is a casual and creative group of volunteers that started running professional development events, including Fuse, about 7 years ago. SPMA has over 225 paid members and over 1,000 professionals on their mailing list who represent Saskatchewan's best in the fields of marketing, advertising, writing, media relations, and public relations. For information on joining the board or just to sign up, go to the SPMA website at saskmarketing.com. That's saskmarketing.com. Once again, I'd like to thank Sharday for co-hosting the podcast today. And of course, we'd like to thank you, the listener. None of this would be possible without you. If you like the show, please take the time to rate, subscribe, or review the podcast, or all three. Having this kind of audience feedback really makes it easier for other folks with an interest in market research to find the show. We'll be back in a few weeks with more episodes of Stories of Market Research, the Insightrix podcast.